My name is Ethan Cole, and I've been a park ranger for almost 7 years. I thought I'd seen everything the wilderness could throw at a man. Storms, wildfires, lost hikers, even a bear attack once. But nothing prepared me for what I found in Yosemite. 3 months ago, a fire tore through the forest in Idaho where I worked. It happened fast, like the earth itself wanted to breathe fire. 3 of my colleagues didn't make it out. I was the one who found them. After that, I couldn't sleep without hearing the crackle of burning wood. I requested a transfer, anywhere that wasn't Idaho. The higher-ups assigned me to Yosemite National Park, to a small outpost called Station 19. They said it was quiet, peaceful, remote, exactly what I needed. They didn't mention that no one stays there long. The road to Station 19 wound through miles of pine and fog. My headlights cut through the mist in short, pale beams. The deeper I drove, the less my radio worked, until it gave up completely, just static and silence. The dirt road narrowed, half washed away from old floods. I arrived at dusk, when the sun was nothing but a smear of orange behind the mountains. The station sat in a clearing, a weather-beaten log cabin, surrounded by trees that looked far too close. A single porch light flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. Ranger Dawson was waiting for me. He must have been in his late 50s, lean and pale, eyes set deep like he hadn't slept in weeks. His handshake was weak and cold. "You're Cole?" he asked. I nodded. He gave a slow, uncertain smile. "Good. Thought they'd stopped sending replacements." The inside of the cabin smelled like damp wood and old coffee. A radio sat on the desk, older than I was, its knobs worn smooth. A large map of Yosemite hung on the wall, sections circled in red ink and labeled restricted. I asked about the markings. "Old fires," he said quickly, but his tone was off, like he was reciting an answer he'd been told to give. As we finished inventory, I tried to lighten the mood. "So, why is this place so quiet? No tourists out here?" Dawson's gaze drifted toward the window. "They used to come," he said. "They just don't come back." I waited for him to laugh. He didn't. He grabbed his coat, pausing at the door. "Listen, Cole, nights here aren't like days. Keep the radio close. And read this." He handed me a sealed envelope. Its paper yellowed, corners soft from years of handling. On the front, written in bold black ink, were 5 words that made me forget to breathe. "Read before your first night." I sat on the edge of the narrow bunk, the old floorboards creaking under my boots, and tore open the envelope. A faint smell of mildew rose from it, like paper left too long in the rain. Inside was a single folded sheet, yellowed and soft at the corners. The handwriting was uneven, letters slanted, pressed too hard into the paper as if written in a hurry. Across the top, scrawled in thick black ink, were the words, "Rules for surviving the night in Yosemite, Station 19. For a moment, I just stared at it. Rules for surviving? I thought it was some kind of safety checklist. But as I read further, my amusement turned to something colder. After 11:47 p.m., do not open the door, no matter who knocks or calls your name. If you hear the radio turn on after you've shut it off, count down from 10 to 1 and close your eyes. Do not look at it. If you see a yellow light glowing in the forest, do not look at it twice. Never leave the station after midnight, not even to rescue someone. If you see your reflection smile at you through the glass, turn off every light and wait 7 minutes. If you hear footsteps on the roof, do not turn on your flashlight. At 3:33 a.m., you may hear someone calling Ranger. Do not answer. At dawn, if you see Dawson standing outside the window, do not open it. Dawson died in 1998. I blinked, reading that last line twice. I must have read it wrong. Dawson was alive. I just met him. I let out a nervous laugh that sounded too loud in the empty cabin. "Good one," I muttered. Hazing. Every ranger station had its initiation story. Ghost tales meant to freak out the new guy. This was probably theirs. Still, there was something about the paper that made my skin crawl. The ink bled slightly where it had been pressed down too long. Some of the letters were smeared, as if written with shaking hands. At the bottom of the page, beneath the 8th rule, I noticed something odd. A faint indentation, like someone had pressed a pen but didn't finish writing. Then, barely visible in the dim lamplight, a 9th line appeared in much smaller, thinner handwriting. 9. Never trust the voice on the radio. It will begin with "This is HQ." I stared at it for a long time. The handwriting didn't match the rest. This line looked like it was added later, cramped and desperate, the ink a slightly different color. I ran my thumb over it. The paper felt brittle, old, maybe decades old. Outside, wind hissed through the trees, dragging the sound of creaking branches across the roof. I caught myself glancing at the old radio on the desk. Its black casing was scratched and dented, a relic from another time. The power knob was switched firmly to off, yet I couldn't shake the idea that it was listening. I folded the paper back up and tucked it into the logbook. A joke, I told myself again. Just a stupid joke. But even as I said it, I noticed the oddest thing. The top edge of the paper was singed, the faint smell of burned ash still clinging to it. Dawson had left before sunset. I watched from the window as he drove off down the road, his truck headlights cutting through the fog. The forest swallowed him whole within seconds. Silence settled over Station 19. Not the kind of quiet you get when the world sleeps, but the kind that presses against your ears until you swear you can hear your own heartbeat. I looked at the clock on the wall. 11:42 p.m. 5 minutes until the first rule mattered. Outside, the wind shifted. Something in the woods creaked, like a footstep. I told myself it was just a branch. I didn't believe it. My first night at Station 19 began like any other quiet shift. I went through the standard routine, checked the perimeter lights, logged weather conditions, and made sure the generator had fuel for the night. Everything seemed fine, if a little too still. Even the forest outside looked frozen in place, its branches unmoving despite the cold wind that whispered through the cracks in the cabin walls. By midnight, I convinced myself that the rules were just a local prank. Some dark humor left behind by the last ranger to keep newcomers on edge. I poured a cup of lukewarm coffee and sat at the desk, staring at the old radio. Its black surface caught the faint glow of my lantern, and I could see my own reflection in it. Eyes tired, jaw tight, trying not to think about Idaho. Then, at 12:03 a.m., the radio came alive. A sharp crack of static burst through the silence, making me spill my coffee. I turned toward it, confused. The power knob was still set to off. The static grew louder, steadier, before a calm female voice spoke, clear and close, like she was right behind me. "This is HQ. Ranger Cole, please confirm check-in." I froze. The transmission tone was identical to the one used by the park's real headquarters. For a second, I thought maybe the system had switched on by itself. Then my handheld radio on my belt buzzed. The real HQ frequency. Two voices, the same phrase, almost overlapping, but one came 3 seconds earlier than the other. I snatched up the handheld and answered, "Station 19, this is Cole. Reading you." The radio on the desk repeated my words, half a heartbeat late, distorted, like an echo. "This is Cole. Reading you." That shouldn't have been possible. I reached over and switched the base radio off completely. The static stopped, but something else came through, a faint, rhythmic sound. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. I yanked the power cord out of the wall. Silence. The rules floated up in my mind like a whisper I couldn't ignore. Never trust the voice on the radio. It will begin with "This is HQ." I sat still for what felt like hours, the only sound the ticking clock above the map. When I finally looked, it was only 12:47 a.m. Outside, fog had swallowed the forest. I could barely make out the tree line beyond the porch. The temperature had dropped fast. My breath clouded the window pane. Then, through the fog, I saw it, a faint yellow light between the trees. At first, I thought it was a camper, maybe someone lost after dark. But the light flickered oddly, swaying side to side like a lantern being carried by an unsteady hand. I grabbed my binoculars. Through the lens, the shape resolved into a figure, a man in a ranger's jacket, standing perfectly still. The yellow glow came from something at his feet, impossible to see clearly through the fog. He raised his hand and waved. My chest tightened. I couldn't make out his face. Every instinct told me to go outside, to help. But my eyes darted to the rules pinned beside the desk. If you see a yellow light in the forest, do not look at it twice. I blinked, pulled the binoculars away, rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, the light was gone. Relief washed over me for a second, until the same glow appeared again, this time to the right of the cabin, closer, shining through the edge of the window. That wasn't possible. I stood, backed away, and yanked the blinds shut. The glow seeped faintly through the gaps for a few seconds, then disappeared. I didn't move for a long time. I kept my flashlight in one hand, the rule sheet in the other. Somewhere in the distance, an owl cried, but it came out warped, stretched, too long to be natural. Then came the sound of footsteps, soft, deliberate, pacing the roof above me. My grip tightened on the flashlight. Rule 6. If you hear footsteps on the roof, do not turn on your flashlight. I stood in the dark, heart hammering, staring up at the ceiling. Dust fell from the old beams. The steps moved from one end of the roof to the other, then stopped directly above my bed. Silence. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. At 3:33 a.m., the clock clicked, and from behind me, just inches away from my ear, came a low, drawn-out whisper. "Ranger." It was deep, familiar, almost human. The voice sounded like Dawson's. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around. But I remembered the 7th rule. I didn't. I stood there, frozen in the dark, counting my breaths, until the dawn light finally crept through the blinds. While I dared to look, there were no footprints, no sign of anyone else. Only the radio, still unplugged, with a small red light glowing faintly on its display. The second night at Station 19 started just like the first, quiet, heavy, waiting. The air carried that same metallic smell the forest gets before a storm. I told myself I was overreacting, that the radio and the lights were just coincidences. Maybe the wiring was old. Maybe my nerves were worse than I thought. By 11 p.m., I checked the locks twice, poured another cup of coffee, and left the rule sheet pinned above the desk like a reminder I didn't want to admit I believed. I kept glancing at the line that read, after 11:47 p.m., do not open the door. The numbers burned into my head like a countdown. Outside, rain began to fall, slow at first, then in sheets that blurred the world beyond the window. The sound of water hitting the tin roof was almost hypnotic. At 2:04 a.m., the monitor above the desk flashed. The motion sensor camera on the porch had picked up something. I leaned closer. Through the grainy static feed, I saw a figure, a woman in a red rain jacket, standing just beyond the porch light. She was soaked, hair plastered to her face, shivering violently. She knocked once on the door, 3 sharp, hollow thuds that echoed through the cabin. "Please," she said, voice thin and trembling. "I'm lost. I just need help." The sound came through clear, not from a speaker, but from the other side of the wooden door. My stomach twisted. I looked at the clock. 2:05 a.m. The rule was clear. Don't open the door. No matter who knocks. No matter what they say. But the woman's voice cracked on the last word. The kind of sound that cut straight through training and logic. I'd spent my life helping lost people in these woods. It's what I was supposed to do. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped toward the door. "Ma'am, can you move closer to the light?" I called out. The woman didn't answer. On the monitor, she just stood there, head tilted slightly. Something felt off. Her stance was too still. Even with the rain pouring down, she wasn't moving, not even shivering anymore. Then she lifted her face. The camera caught it for a single second before the feed glitched. Her eyes were completely white. No pupils, no reflection, just white. The screen went black. My heart hammered so hard I thought I might pass out. But when the knocking came again, softer this time, something in me broke. The line between compassion and fear. I unlocked the door. Rain and wind burst in, but the porch was empty. No footprints. No sign of anyone leaving the steps. Only a pool of water spreading slowly across the wooden floor, glistening under the flashlight. Then I saw it. 5 wet fingerprints in the puddle, pressed into the wood, as if something had crawled forward. Another set appeared a few inches away. They were moving, one after another, leading down the hallway toward my bedroom. The flashlight flickered. I backed up, breathing fast. The lights in the cabin cut out all at once. Total darkness. Then the radio on the desk crackled to life. "This is HQ," a woman's voice said, calm and precise. "Good job, Ranger Cole. She's inside now." The voice changed mid-sentence, warping lower, drawn out until it sounded almost human, almost familiar. I stumbled backward, knocking into the chair. Something dripped onto my neck, cold water. The ceiling above me groaned. I could hear it moving in the crawl space, wet footsteps dragging across the beams. Then, silence. I ran for the closet and shut myself inside, pressing my back against the door, flashlight off. My breath was too loud. Every creak of the floor felt magnified. From somewhere in the cabin came a slow, rhythmic sound. Drip, 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 water hitting the floor. Then the unmistakable sound of someone walking barefoot, each step squelching wetly. The footsteps stopped right outside the closet. I held my breath. Something brushed against the door. A fingertip, tracing the wood grain slowly from top to bottom. Then came a soft exhale, right at the crack near my ear. Ranger. It was the same voice from the night before. Deeper now. Closer. I wanted to scream, to burst through the door, but I couldn't move. I stared through the thin sliver of light between the boards. Two pale shapes appeared. Feet, dripping, standing just inches away. The water pooled around them, seeping under the door. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then, silence. When I finally pushed the door open, the cabin was empty. The rain outside had stopped, but my bed was soaked, sheets heavy with cold water. On the wall above it, handprints, dark, wet, and small, trailed upward, ending near the ceiling. They weren't pressed on. They looked dragged, like something had crawled across the wall, then vanished into the shadows. The radio was quiet again, the light on its display dead. I unplugged it, turned the lock on the door, and sat in the middle of the room until dawn crept through the window. When the first sunlight hit, I saw something new, etched faintly in the fog on the glass. You shouldn't have opened the door. Morning came gray and silent, the kind of dawn that feels more like an apology than a beginning. I hadn't slept. Every surface in the cabin still glistened faintly with moisture, and the air smelled of rust and rain. The radio sat on the desk, unplugged but somehow still humming with a low, almost imperceptible vibration. I couldn't look at it for long without feeling my stomach twist. I needed answers. I tore through every cabinet and drawer in Station 19. Old Ranger logs, inspection notes, faded photographs, all left behind and never cleaned out. It was as if no one had bothered to pack when they left. Or maybe they hadn't left at all. At the bottom of a file drawer, beneath stacks of soggy paperwork, I found a folder sealed inside a plastic sleeve. The label read, Incident Report, Station 19, July 1998. The paper inside was yellowed and brittle, typed on an old machine. My hand shook as I read. Ranger Dawson missing after flood rescue mission, July 12, 1998. Presumed dead. Search efforts suspended after 4 days due to unstable terrain. Last recorded communication, 3:33 a.m. There was a photograph attached. 4 Rangers standing in front of the same cabin I was sitting in now. Dawson was there, younger but unmistakable. To his right stood a woman with dark hair and a bright red Ranger jacket. The caption beneath the photo read simply, Team 19, Yosemite South Sector. My throat went dry. The woman in the photo was the one who'd knocked on my door last night. The same jacket, the same expression, blank, distant, almost waiting. I flipped through the rest of the report. Near the end, a line caught my eye. Bodies not recovered. Believed buried in post-flood landslide near Basin Ridge. Station declared inactive until further notice. But Station 19 wasn't inactive. It was still listed in the assignment roster. Someone had reactivated it. And someone, or something, was still answering as HQ. I found an old cassette recorder buried under a pile of maps. Inside was a tape labeled in black marker, Dawson, Final Log. The plastic was warped with age, but when I pressed play, the reel groaned and the speaker crackled. Then I heard his voice. If anyone finds this recording, don't trust HQ. His voice was ragged, breathless, the sound of rain and distant thunder bleeding through the static. It isn't human. We thought it was a system malfunction, until it started giving orders that didn't make sense. Then it began calling us by name. It told us where to go. We followed. There was a long pause, then a shaky breath. We tried to leave after the flood, but it doesn't let you go. Every road loops back. The forest changes when you try to leave. We keep hearing ourselves on the radio. The tape clicked softly, but one last whisper slipped through, so faint I almost missed it. If you hear it say, "This is HQ," it already knows your voice. I stopped the recorder. My hands were trembling too hard to hold it steady. It all made sense now. The HQ signal wasn't a communication channel. It was a lure. Something old, something that lived in the static, that mimicked voices and memories to call rangers out into the woods. And once it drew one in, it replaced them. That's why the woman's body was never found. That's why Dawson had been waiting at the station when I arrived, decades after his death. I looked around the cabin, the damp walls, the rusted fixtures, the faint radio hum. It wasn't just a building. It was part of whatever this thing was. Outside, the wind shifted. I could swear I heard faint whispers carry through the trees, layered, overlapping, like several voices speaking at once. And beneath them all, faint but steady, came a familiar tone. "This is HQ. Ranger Cole, report your status." I didn't move. The radio wasn't plugged in. By the third night, I made my decision. I was leaving Station 19. I didn't care about protocol, about consequences, about who might be listening. Whatever lived here, whatever called itself HQ, wasn't going to keep me. I packed fast. Flashlight, keys, map. The rule sheet lay crumpled on the floor, edges damp and curling. I left it there. Let it rot with the rest of this cursed place. The wind outside was already howling by the time I zipped my bag. I was halfway to the door when the radio sparked to life again. No power, no connection, but glowing faintly red. "This is HQ Cole. Do not leave the station." I froze. The voice was calm, familiar, too familiar. It was my voice, not similar, not close, exact. Every inflection, every breath, every subtle hesitation. It was me, talking from the other side of the static. "Cole," it said again, firmer this time. "You know what happens if you go." I stepped forward and slammed the radio shut, the casing cracking beneath my palm. The sound cut out. For half a second, the silence felt like relief. Then, from outside, the forest answered with a low hum, like the static had spilled into the air itself. I grabbed my bag and ran. The night swallowed me whole. The trees loomed close, their trunks slick with rain. My flashlight beam cut through sheets of mist, every shadow twisting just a little too slowly, as if watching me pass. Behind me, the cabin's faint yellow light flickered once, twice, then went dark. Somewhere ahead, through the trees, another yellow glow shimmered. I slowed. It pulsed softly between the pines, warm, almost inviting. Against every instinct, I took a step closer. The light brightened. A figure stepped out from the fog. He was wearing my uniform, my badge, even the tear in the sleeve I'd made the first day. His face, my face, tilted toward me with an expression I recognized instantly because it was mine. He smiled. "You shouldn't have looked twice." The forest exploded with light. I stumbled back, blinded, my flashlight slipping from my hand. The world twisted, trees bending, ground shifting, gravity pulling sideways. I ran, branches tearing at my jacket, rain stinging my skin. Behind me, footsteps followed, perfectly matching mine, every stride, every splash in the mud. I didn't dare look back. A sound like a thunderclap rolled through the valley. When I turned my head just once, Station 19 was burning. No, collapsing, folding in on itself under a blinding yellow glow that swallowed everything. The light reached the treetops and went out. Then there was only darkness, and my own breath echoing in the void. But it wasn't alone. Somewhere behind me, my voice whispered from the rain-soaked dark. "You're not leaving, Cole. You're already here." I woke to the sound of rain against glass. A dull fluorescent light buzzed above me. For a moment, I thought I was back in the cabin, but the air was cleaner, brighter, sterile. I was sitting at a metal desk inside the Yosemite Central Ranger office. My head throbbed. My uniform was dry, spotless. The mud, the blood, the rain, gone, as if none of it had ever happened. A man in a gray uniform stood across from me. His badge read Supervisor Miller. His tone was casual, but his eyes held that bureaucratic emptiness that makes you feel like a piece of paper instead of a person. "Ranger Cole," he said, sliding a sealed envelope across the desk. "We've got an open post at Station 19. The last ranger didn't check back in. You're assigned there starting tonight." My throat tightened. "Station 19? He nodded. "You'll find everything you need in there. Read the orientation letter before your first night." My fingers hesitated, but I tore open the envelope anyway. Inside was a single yellowed sheet, soft and worn, the edges smudged with fingerprints. Across the top, in the same uneven scrawl, were the words, "Rules for surviving the night in Yosemite Station 19. There were 9 rules. The last one written in trembling ink. I leaned closer, heart pounding. The handwriting was unmistakable, uneven, pressed too hard, desperate. It was my handwriting. Outside the office window, thunder rolled over the valley. A faint hum came from the old wall radio, static crackling, just before a voice emerged. "This is HQ. Ranger Cole, please confirm check-in."